That meant that natural gas development was subject to market incentives. Other parts of the world are still figuring out how to do this. For example, Europe. Europe, of course, is splintered among a bunch of small countries. France isn't even any larger than Texas. Germany a little bit smaller than that, and so forth. So these are not big countries, and they don't have a European-wide gas market, which is an impediment to the development of this resource for various reasons. Anyway, we have it. Market incentives then. So economic incentives have always influenced the development of subsurface resources. After 1978, the Natural Gas Policy Act, the economic incentives were market incentives. By the way, Jimmy Carter and the Congress, this is a Congress made up of people from Abe's party, not mine, and so they didn't believe that there was a great bounty of natural gas out there. They didn't think that we would be flooded with natural gas. In fact, quite the opposite. Carter was really worried. He said we should do everything possible to avoid using natural gas because we were going to run out of it. Nevertheless, we still had this. So two things happened thanks to deregulation, the creation of a nationwide continental dimension market for natural gas, which was that people started exploring everywhere. You suddenly had an incentive to do that. But of even greater importance was technological improvement. The foremost authority, the fellow who writes the most and the most articulately about energy economics is somebody in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Daniel Yergin, Y-E-R-G-I-N. He writes best-selling books about this. And as he points out, consistently over time, 75% of our additions to so-called energy reserves. A reserve is a resource, but it's a subcategory of resources. A reserve is a resource that, first of all, you've identified. You've pinpointed it in the ground. But moreover, it's a resource that can be extracted economically, profitably at current prices. So that's the subcategory there. Consistently, year in and year out, decade in, decade out, reserves have gone up because of technological improvement. In other words, we don't add to our reserves of oil and gas the way that Jed Clampett does. So most of you guys are old enough. So how did Jed Clampett do this? Then one day he was out shooting for some food, and this is terrible. Let's try our one clap. Welcome. Up through the ground came some bubbling crude. This is not how we discover oil and natural gas. It's through technological improvements. And there was a gentleman, petroleum engineer, graduate of Texas A&M, a Greek American by the name of, with an obvious Greek American name named George Mitchell. So he wasn't George Mitchell, the former senator from Maine, the failed diplomat, and so forth. This was the important George Mitchell, and he set to work basically combining two technologies. Both of them have been around for a while. One is called hydraulic fracturing. This is where you take a water-based or aqueous solution, inject it into the ground at very high pressure, and you crack open the rock, or some geologic stratum that contains hydrocarbons. The industry, the oil and gas industry, has been doing this in Ohio since the late 1940s, so it's not new. There were going to be a lot of improvements in this. The other technology, which was really the determining one, was horizontal drilling. It used to be called directional drilling. And all of you have seen the ads, quasi-public service ads by trade associations of a speaker, someone certainly more attractive than yours truly, saying they're showing the drill going down and way out. This was very important because of the resources that the industry went out after, the shale. Now, a couple things you need to know about shale. These are the remnants of ancient ocean beds, about 350 to 400 million years old. They're a mile and a half, 2 miles underground, generally, something like that. Well, it varies. There are shales, these same shales that are close to the surface, but they're deep. That's one problem. And of course, those of you who drill for anything, a water well or whatever, know that the farther down you drill, the more expensive it gets. That's true of water. It's definitely true of oil and natural gas. So these are deep down there, these shales. Moreover, it's just like the name of the restaurant. These are hard rocks. One person in the energy industry told me one time, the only thing that is more hard down there is the drill bit. So this is really hard rock, very dense. You do need to fracture it and so forth. And the only way that you could go down that far after that rock is thanks to being able to drill down a mile and a half, and then out. So it was that combination. It was George Mitchell. Again, the good George Mitchell, not the failed diplomat. The good George Mitchell. He tinkered with this. Of course, he in a market setting. By the way, I love this industry. Not the solar energy industry. I don't like Hollywood. I don't like high tech. The people out in the Bay Area, they're the ones who hire people who write code. People from South Asia, they hire them for $60,000 a year, make them live in Hayward, California, in deficiency apartments and so forth. They don't hire very many of them, and that's Facebook, right? Well, this is an industry that hires American engineers, lots of them, and they really put them to work. So, and they tinker and they come up with stuff with minimal public investment. Just the opposite of Solyndra. So George Mitchell tinkered with this work for many, many years in his native Texas, and came up with this. Oh, by the way, there are other technological innovations. My favorite is what I heard about just about 3 years ago when I was starting to get into this area. Heard a presentation by a geophysicist, a Ph.D. geophysicist, but he was way beyond universities. This guy had his own private company in this industry, which is really a high-tech industry. That's the first thing that you learn about the energy industry. He has what's called a microseismic technology. And the way he described it, he said, just imagine that you're holding a full can of Coke. I'm going to say a full can of beer because my daughter works for me. So a full can of beer, and you drop it on a solid concrete floor. And his technology, and his company isn't the only one that has this microseismic technology, but he has it. His company's technology can pick up the reverberations that sets off, even if those reverberations start off 10,000 feet below the surface of the ground. So this is extremely sensitive technology. It has really rendered Jed Clampett obsolete. It means that dry holes are essentially a thing of the past. The natural gas industry in this country, when it makes a decision to drill someplace, it hits hydrocarbons more than 98% of the time. And now, sometimes the hydrocarbons are not commercial. There's problems with the geology and so forth. But they always virtually always they find hydrocarbons. More than that, they're using this microseismic technology. They're putting it behind the drill bits. And they are receivers and transmitters and so forth, as the drill bit snakes its way through the ground. And so if you go out to a well pad, drilling well pads someplace, you'll see these parabola antennae and so forth. They're broadcasting in real time what's happening underground back to the operations center, where they have these James Bond type screens, and they're following what they're doing. This is all the technology that private ownership, market forces, and the technological innovation that followed in a market economy. This is what has been delivered. Didn't happen instantaneously. George Mitchell didn't drill his first commercial well until not much more than 15 years ago, the turn of the 21st century. He drilled in North Texas, even into the city of Fort Worth, and then they've hit gas. The major beneficiaries of this, by the way, are the major beneficiaries of all market-led technological innovation, and they are consumers. Okay, and we can see this in terms of prices. It used to be that natural gas prices, there was no reason for this to happen, but natural gas prices used to coincide very tightly with oil prices. That was true through 2008, for example. So Tara, where you used to live in Louisiana, prices would go up and down with oil, and particularly if if there was a hurricane that would hit the Gulf, where a lot, in the old days, not so long ago, where a lot of our gas production was concentrated, and where imports of liquefied natural gas would come in, then the price would go up. So in 2008, the price of natural gas, which in the past couple of years has been around $3-4 per 1,000 cubic feet, got up above $10. Well, that no longer happens so much. The price these days, with an unusually cold winter, the natural gas price have crept up a little above $5 per 1,000 cubic feet, but it has stayed pretty consistently at $3.50, $4, which is about the cost of pulling this stuff out of of fracking it out of the ground. So it's the consumer who wins from this. By the way, a tremendous shot in the arm for U.S. industry, say for petrochemical polymer production. Our U.S. industry, the chemical industry, competes with the German chemical industry. The German industry, for example, BASF along the Rhine River, uses petroleum-derived feedstock. Their electricity prices, given the German infatuation with solar energy and wind energy and so forth, their electricity prices are double ours. Our electricity prices are being held down because of natural gas and so forth. Well, we have a tremendous advantage in terms of, well, what the energy industry calls the downstream portion. So this, in brief, is the picture. Oh, one other thing. So commercial shale development began around the year 2000. And the impact on our thinking about energy and about the natural gas sector and so forth was not immediate. In 2004, Alan Greenspan, head of the Federal Reserve, was still warning about impending shortages of natural gas. He said, well, we need to build import facilities, terminals to bring in liquefied natural gas from overseas at the cost of about $1 billion a pop for each one of these facilities. And they were built. And other countries, Venezuela and Qatar and so forth, ramped up natural gas production capacity in order to supply the United States. We are not buying that stuff. And so even though there isn't, I mentioned earlier, there's no continent-sized market for natural gas anywhere in the world, and there certainly isn't a global market. We have a lot of variety in natural gas prices between our own low prices, $3.54, $4.50 per 1,000 cubic feet, and say Japan, where the price is still above $15 per 1,000 cubic feet, and in Europe not too much less than that. But the mere fact that we're not buying that natural gas gives us a hint of the global significance of this shale energy revolution. It is breaking the monopoly of the Russians, those bad bastards over there. Pardon the technical language. But this is the best thing that we can be doing to break Putin's economic back, which I think is a good idea. Another major exporter of natural gas is Iran and so forth. I have to chuckle. I'm from a port city, so I'm an economist. I love free trade. I hate interference with market forces. And some of my colleagues at the university who are involved in this say, oh, well, we shouldn't be exporting. And I say, you losers, get out there and compete. And so we're going to have an advantage anyway. It's expensive. Transoceanic shipping of natural gas costs about $5 per 1,000 cubic feet. So even if there were truly an integrated global market for this stuff, we would be paying $5 per 1,000 cubic feet less than the importing regions, such as Japan and Europe and China and so forth. So that should be enough of an advantage for anybody, such as our chemical industry and whatever. And it is of strategic significance that we're developing this. These shale resources are all over the world. One last thing I need to tell you about shale resources, and then I'll say something quickly about what we're doing at Ohio State. They are all over the place. How many of you have heard the term peak oil uttered during the last 2 years? During the last 2 years. You shouldn't have, because it is dropping out of the lexicon. No less an authority than Daniel Yergin says, oh, we don't, he refuses to use that term anymore. It is obsolete. Why? Okay, these deep ocean beds that are the shales, the remnants of these deep ocean beds, are basically the mother rock for all oil and gas. Before these technological advances, the industry never tapped into it. It was, again, too deep, too hard, too inconvenient, and so forth. So the oil and gas industry went after deposits generally closer to the ground, limestones and sandstones and so forth, easier to get at. But the hydrocarbons in those more convenient deposits had all, over geologic time, migrated from the shale up into this. The point is, at least 90% of the hydrocarbons originally in the shale, it's just like Vegas, are still there. This is a mother lode of hydrocarbon resources and so forth. This means, among other things, that it makes gas so plentiful and it's going to stay cheap. It's been interesting to watch the environmental activists. Some of them, the environmental movement has a real split opinion on this. Some environmental organizations recognize the benefits of natural gas development. There's no better way to make electricity than with gas-fired generators. The generators themselves are more efficient than any alternative technology, and the feedstock is so cheap. So it outcompetes everything, including coal, but also including the wind and solar that the environmentalists cherish. Anyway, this is. But the fact is that the wing of the environmental community, wackadoodles like from my home state, for example, or along the archipelago of communities from Marin County through Monterey and Santa Barbara, they imagine a world without shale and so forth. And they don't like this because it's going to put their windmills out of business. But the rest of this is a wonderful thing.
I get the impression that most of the people who are doing the drilling for fracking are smaller companies rather than the big energy companies.
Yeah, this is sort of bypassed the Exxons and the Chevrons and the Shells and so forth. So you get names like Devon from Oklahoma City. Well, there's Chesapeake, formerly Aubrey McClendon's company. Although everything that Aubrey McClendon is for Aubrey McClendon first. He's sort of a buccaneer. But that sort of goes along with the nature of this industry. Let me just tell you about Ohio State. So I mentioned that consumers have been the main beneficiaries of this development, and the benefit that consumers have received is in the form of lower prices. Just like with agriculture, over time, technological improvements in agriculture have benefited food consumers far more than anyone else, farmers and so forth. It always happens. And this is particularly true for dry natural gas, also called methane. So methane is what we burn to heat our homes, and this is what we burn to produce electricity increasingly, and what fleet vehicles are shifting over to and so forth, and also what we liquefy and export overseas. Now, prices have gotten so low that deposits that are mainly deposits of formations that are mainly deposits of dry natural gas, they're drilling and then shutting in the wells. They're not exploiting immediately. The prices are too low. This is true of parts of the Marcellus, which is centered in Pennsylvania. It's true of the Haynesville and Arkansas, northern Louisiana, and so forth. Our shale deposits in Ohio are different. So we have part of the Marcellus, this Pennsylvania-centered deposit, extends into the easternmost counties of Ohio. But we also have the Utica, Point Pleasant. The Utica is actually a very large formation. It extends from western Ontario to our north under Lake Erie, and then into under a bit of New York and Pennsylvania and Ohio. But we have the sweet spot, the part of the shale, the Utica shale, that is at the right depth, the right thickness, and so forth, and of the right age. It is a source of dry natural gas. It also has natural gas liquids, ethane and so forth, that are the basic ingredients, the building blocks for petrochemical and polymer production. Polymer industry is very important in the state, employs 130,000 people and so forth. Also has some oil. So at a time 2 or 3 years ago, when wells were being shut down in other parts of the country, we saw an uptick in drilling in this part of the state. The university has responded in various ways. We established this center in September 2011. The director is a geologist, probably the individual on campus with more experience in the energy industry. He's a geologist named Jeff Daniels. And I'll tell you our big focus right now, there's a university property, the Eastern Agricultural Research Station. It's over in Noble County, a little bit southeast of Cambridge. So just imagine the intersection of Interstate 70 and 77. So it's southeast of that. And this is a fairly large parcel of land. It is right in the center of this sweet spot, the emerging center. The nice part, the attractive part of the Utica Shale, for a while it seemed it was going to be a little bit farther north, so bounded in the north by Interstate 80, on the west by Interstate 77, on the south by 77, and on the east by the state line. The industry is migrating south of 70 right toward this agricultural experiment station. Our hope is to use this to establish a field laboratory with a working well that will generate some money for the university. The university is pretty interested in money. But also a place that it'll be a unique site in the United States where geologists can do geological research, environmentalists. We have a very large group of environmental scientists to study how water quality, air quality, and so forth is affected by this development. And it's going to be a unique opportunity. We're going to team. We're not going to run this well ourselves. University professors doing this, but we're going to team with at least one other company and provide some real opportunities to study how shale development should be done right in the most environmentally sound manner possible, with the smallest impact on the environment.
When are you guys going to drill that well?
Pardon?
When's that well going to be drilled?
We're still negotiating this. The state needs to revisit statutes, a little bit of statutory language. It is sort of above my pay grade, but that'll basically allow the university to contract with companies the way that we envision, and that's still being worked out. But we're quite confident it'll be worked out soon. Well.
All right, one more question. Go ahead, Bonnie.
How does natural gas propelling cars fit in with electric cars? You say natural gas went out or electric went out, so we have to use natural gas?
Well, there are two separate technologies, and the first vehicles to run on natural gas, and you're already seeing them. You're seeing them with city buses. Basically, any fleet vehicle. Like UPS delivery vans, mail trucks, buses, all these things that return to the same place every evening and they can be refueled, because there's some logistical issues here. There's some time involved in refueling. So, but the fleet vehicles work well. The next step, and this is where you hear, who's the guy from T. Boone Pickens, the big beneficiary of Oklahoma State University, and he wants to shift our interstate fleet over to this. Now, there are already some semi-trucks, Giant Eagle, for example, which is not a very popular name of Worthington, but the Giant Eagle has its base of operations in Pittsburgh, or Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, and they run deliveries out of there. Evidently, virtually all those trucks are natural gas fired. So, but to go from that to cars is going to take something. You could run your car now on this, but you would just have to have some sort of compressor. There's sort of a trade-off between the capacity of that compressor that you might put in your garage versus how long it takes to fuel up.
How about the hydrogen? Because that's what they say is going to take over for the gas. Well,
they say gas is a bridge fuel, but hydrogen technology isn't quite there yet, like a lot of others.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Okay, you guys.
Well, Doug, I know you have your name and